Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 12, Episode number 43. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Glad you guys are back with us here for this Friday show as we head into Week 9, the Steelers bye week. So it'll be a pretty calm and quiet bye week. We think. We never know what can happen. That's the beauty of the NFL. But Dave, watching Javon Hargrave last night, can he come back? Is that okay? Can we bring Javon Hargrave back to the Pittsburgh Steelers?
Yeah, we didn't even talk about that in the very lengthy pre-production meeting for this Friday show here, but I had a feeling that was, if you didn't bring it up, I was going to bring it up to myself there. Man, you want to talk about a guy that, look, I mean, it's no doubt that he's been playing well, but he really played well. He was a monster in that game against the Texans on Thursday night, and what could have been, right? I mean, nobody knew the way this stuff was going to play out with Stephon Tuitt, obviously, and then you had the whole, COVID situation and the cap and all like that, I think. But man, it makes you kind of wonder how nice it would be for this team to have Javon Hargrave on a new deal at this point, and because he's a man child right now, and he really showed that in that game against the Texans and really kind of took it over, I thought, in the second half. And his price, the meter's still running on him. I think he's going to be expensive to somebody, and you would think, I mean, I don't know, the Eagles have a lot of talent, a lot of young talent up front, obviously, but you would think that they would still probably try to want to get him back, and whether or not they can afford to do it, we'll see.
I'm sure they will. I believe Fletcher Cox is a free agent after this year, so they can probably use money that they're not going to spend on him and put it to Javon Hargrave. So we'll see how it goes, but certainly watching the Eagles turn it on against the Texans last night to pull away, watching Hargrave, put that thought probably in every Steelers fan head. All right, Dave, we'll kick the show off today. Where do you want to start here? I guess we'll kind of wrap up with some final thoughts on the trades that happened Tuesday with Chase Claypool, William Jackson, Mike Tomlin. Speaking to the media the other day, of course, was asked about the Chase Claypool deal, kind of broke it down into two parts. One saying the value of the trade was really exciting and attractive to the Steelers, getting a second-round pick from Chicago. That much is obvious. And then it went on to say the team felt comfortable about its interior pass game options. Of course, Pat Freiermuth, and then other potential replacement options at wide receiver for Chase Claypool and Steven Sims, Talon Radulov, Gunnar Olszewski, Miles Boykin potentially, although that might be Deontay Johnson playing inside and Boykin outside, not quite sure there. But basically, Tomlin saying team very comfortable with what they have along the interior, and that made them comfortable dealing Chase Claypool away.
Yeah, and still kind of amazed that they were able to get a second-round pick for him. And it'll be, since then, obviously, Chase Claypool has talked to the Chicago media in an introductory press conference, and it doesn't sound like he's going to be playing in the slot a lot for Chicago, does it? And it doesn't seem like he was didn't feel like he was that good of a fit, at least how he was being used. And I can definitely see where he's coming from in that, because you didn't use him in kind of a traditional. You see a lot of slants sometimes to some slots and stuff like that. So he probably still feels like he's better suited on the outside, and I would imagine that that's the way. Hearing the Bears, Ryan Poles talk about him, that's the way he's going to be used there. So until Chase Claypool proves otherwise in Chicago there, I still think the Steelers got the better end of this deal. Now, obviously, Chase Claypool could go out and start stacking people on the outside and making plays, that way. But until I until we see that, I still feel the Steelers got the better end of the deal, and we'll have to now see who steps up in the slot and if that player is used any differently than the way Claypool was used. And I would think kind of the tea leaves and history and of certain players, I would think that guy's going to be Steven Sims to get the the primary first shot of that, if you will. And if you go back and look at the 2 seasons that Steven Sims spent with the Washington franchise, he had some, wasn't anything that was going to get him into the Pro Bowl, but there were some flashes from Steven Sims in the slot, and I would think that he's going to get the first crack at it. You probably will see maybe a little bit of mixing and matching with maybe Deontay getting a snap or two inside there, and we'll see how they use Gunner. I wouldn't think Miles Boykin would get that much work in inside in the slot, but plain and simple, I don't see how this team could have turned down a second round pick for Chase Claypool.
Same. I'm with you 100%. Yeah, with Boykin, he wouldn't play in the slot, I wouldn't think, but there may be situations where Deontay Johnson bumps inside for a couple snaps and then Boykin potentially plays outside for some snaps, so that they could probably rotate things that way. But as you said, Steven Sims should be the first man up of the probably several men up to try to replace and get a look with Claypool dealt. But what do you think? What is the most attractive part and the best part of Sims' game as a receiver that could maybe, change or influence or boost this offense?
Route running, I think.
Okay. Yeah, and this team needs it. And hopefully this kind of encourages and influences this team to use the middle of the field more, to have more yak opportunities, because that's where Sims is really going to thrive.
I think maybe the best part of his game is in the slot and his ability to get some separation in there. Plain and simple. I don't think he's that big of a huge of a threat down the field, but I think in short areas, especially in, when you get inside the 20, and Lord knows this team has had some, problems in the red zone. I think that's an area where you can use him. And there's some very nice tape on him from his time, with Washington in the slot there. And man, if he can provide any yards after the catch, that's the thing that still continues to get kind of swept underneath the rug, if you will, about this team right now is, the running game's not good, and that obviously needs to get better. And, they're not unable to get things down the field. But when you don't have those two things going for you, and then on top of it, your short passing game does not produce much of anything in the way of yards after the catch. That really, really hurts. And they've got, people that can do that. We've seen Deontay Johnson have much better yards after the catch numbers. We really don't know too much about, because they haven't given him the opportunity to do it, but you would think that George Pickens should be able to give you some yards after the catch stuff. Claypool, really sans, that catch that he had against the Eagles there. We really haven't seen it much out of them. So him either there. So maybe maybe this is an issue with Sims in that shorter passing game now, where you can get some quick hits to him and, maybe have an explosive play or two out of that because of the ability after the catch there. But look, this is a very important now, with the shape of this team right now, a very important 9-game run for several players on this roster. And Sims is one of those players now. He's playing for his NFL future right now, I think.
Sure. I think his after catch ability is the best part of his game, the most intriguing part of his game. He's got that returner mentality. He's twitchy. He's a fast guy. He can make people miss one-on-one, all the things to make him, I think, a pretty quality return guy. My concern there is, though, does he get Ray rate, or he's just catching swing passes and screen passes and averaging 6.4 yards per catch? Will they really try to use him on more conventional routes? It still can offer yards after catch opportunity in terms of digs and slants and, maybe some more nuanced routes. My concern is because he had 3 targets against Philadelphia, and how many yards did he have? -2. He had one screen to him, and they got blown up. And so my concern is that he just becomes just such a everything at or behind the line of the scrimmage player in an effort to try to get him in space, but ultimately a plan that probably hurts you as much as it helps you.
Yeah, it'd be something fun to track here in these final 9 games is average depth of target for him and average completed catch distance and his yak specifically. And, what are the odds that this guy's going to be a second half, dynamo for them? Probably not great, right?
Right.
It is an opportunity here for him to show something, especially inside at a position that this team hasn't had in a little while there. So I would like to. And this team doesn't know how to, or won't throw a lot of slants, but I'd like to see him used in some of these slants, and obviously slot fades, and just kind of get as creative as you can with that slot position a little bit more, because with the attention that Pickens is going to probably demand at times, and on top of it, look, you're going to continue to see a lot of zone. I think that's one thing that's been really prevalent here, especially against Kenny Pickett, is you're going to see a lot of zone in games. And Sims needs to show his awareness and smartness, and hopefully him and Kenny can get on the same wavelength here, because there's going to be opportunities for him to either, run slants or, run quick, kind of routes through zone windows, and or the ability to sit down in some zones, and then, like you said, use that punt returner ability that he has to maybe get some yards after the catch.
And I'm sure he'll be maybe the main component in the receiver run game with the jets and jet sweeps and all that kind of stuff. You saw some of that against Philadelphia, got 2 decent runs out of it. So I imagine he'll be used, a fair amount there whenever he's on the field. So we'll see how it goes. I mean, beyond Sims, is there anyone else you're really trying to watch? I mean, Gunnar Olszewski, when Gunnar's been on the field this year, it's been 90% run play. So he hasn't really gotten a chance to run many routes this year. So at least you can try to find out a bit more about him. There were some good moments he had as a receiver back in training camp. And again, Boykin may get some more rotational opportunities. I think Deontay Johnson, I know he's a primary X receiver, but I still like him on the slot and occasionally for some one-on-one chances just because of his ability to separate. And maybe that will finally create some yak chances for him, because I think one of the biggest of many mistakes the offense has made this year is misusing Deontay Johnson to not allow him to run after the catch. I mean, last year, I think he was top 10 in yards after catch. Last I checked, he was tied, I think, 144th in yak this year. I mean, how much I understand on the outside, he's creating space. He works well in some of the curls and sprint outs and RPO type stuff. But how this offense has decided to not allow him to run after the catch, it just baffles me.
Well, I imagine if you did put him inside, then you'd see probably George at the X then, right? And then Miles, probably a guy like Miles at the Z then.
Yeah, or, I mean, you could mix and match. I mean, you could have Boykin occasionally SDX, just one-on-one to maybe run some go balls too. But yeah, I think you have some versatility there. I mean, Pittsburgh, in more recent years, it's become less static where you play one position. Guys have shifted around a bit more, and that's probably, it is creating more versatility and should help this team post-Claypool trade.
But what you saying, I mean, I'm not overly enthusiastic about watching any of those other guys other than really Sims, because of probably the snaps aren't going to be there for a guy like Gunnar or a guy like Boykin there. But I really think you probably need to take a good look at what Steven Sims is and isn't, because
right.
Look, if he has a nice, run of 9 games here, and, if you assume that you're going to get a, healthy version of Calvin Austin back next year, then maybe you don't have to spend a draft pick on the wide receiver position, or at minimum spend a very late one on there. See if you get, see what you get in that department there. So how Sims plays combined with the outlook on the health of Calvin Austin III might keep you from having to spend a draft pick on a receiver.
Yeah, we'll see. I still think they invest, somehow, some way, whether that's free agency or the draft. But as you said, this is an opportunity to start answering those questions, to really see what you need, what you don't, who can help you next year, and who you're going to move on from. So is Sims, what's his contract status for next year? Do you know what is he exclusive rights? Is he still under contract? What's his situation?
Oh, man, let's see here.
Trying to think about, I mean, he was a off-season futures guy, right?
Yeah, I think he's going to be an unrestricted guy because I think this is in his fourth season here for him.
It is his fourth. So he'll be unrestricted. Okay.
Right. So, but I mean, you could probably bring him back, at a very decent price, as long as he doesn't blow up. But if he does blow up, then maybe you do look at it because of his ability to return and all like that,
Yeah, you get a little bit worried because you never know. Does he decide to go somewhere else? Another opportunity comes up. We thought McLeod probably come back. He goes to the 49ers because they blow him away with a great offer that Pittsburgh wasn't going to match. So something to watch there. But for the here and now, what really matters today and for the next couple months is how Sims does, and he should get a really good opportunity to showcase what he can do.
Wait a minute here. It looks like he might be restricted because that. Hold on here. I'll have to look at.
Yeah, is your free agency? Because I was going to go to your free agency primer that you do leading into every single year, just to see where Sims was listed on that.
But was he on the 53 to start? I can't remember. Was he?
Yeah, he made the initial 53. Yeah.
Let's see here.
Because they went super heavy with 7 initially, then put Calvin Austin on injured reserve to break him down to 6.
Let me pull up.
I see if his name. I just pulled up your post there. You have him listed as a restricted free agent on your preview post. So that's better news. So he'll tender if he plays well. Sure.
So that gives you an option there to not worry about him flying off. And if he has a nice set of 9 games there, so that's certainly something for Steeler fans to root for in these final 9 games is his progress.
Definitely. Moving over to William Jackson,
this is because he didn't. Most of his time last year was on the practice squad, right? Because
he didn't get the accrued season.
Right. Didn't get the credited season there.
Is accrued and credited the same thing, or do they mean different things?
Accrued goes, I think, in accrued, the one that goes towards benefits, and the credited decides your free agent status.
I don't know. I don't have the CBA on my toilet like you do, so I don't know these things quite as well. But I just trying to think which 2 phrases were different, because I knew there was a difference between something and something. I think might be accrued and credited seasons.
Right. Hold on here a minute here. I had this bookmark somewhere here.
We'll go down the rabbit hole. By the way, while you're looking that up, other restricted free agents to be J.C. Hassenauer and James Pierre wrote an article this morning on James Pierre, wondering how the team may deploy him the rest of the way, and how the William Jackson deal, which we'll talk about a bit more here in a moment, may hinder or block Pierre's opportunity, and getting some feedback on that. So just wanted to kind of write out my thoughts that I talked about a little bit on Wednesday's show. So do you find the information on accrued versus credited, Dave?
I can't find a link on that, but here it is. Accrued seasons versus credited. Accrued seasons used to determine a player's free agency status. So it's accrued, and then that I believe you have to have, I think it's 3 games for an accrued season, and then accredited is used I had them flipped. Credited is used as a measure for benefits and notably utilized to determine a player's minimum salary there. So that's the difference between that. I think what is it? I think
6 for accredited.
I think is it 3? I think it's 3 for accredited and 6 for accrued.
Okay, I don't want to say something wrong.
All right, here it is. For accrued, for at least 6 regular season games. So you need 6 regular season games on an active inactive roster for an accrued season. I think it's 3 for accredited.
That makes sense. Gotcha. All right. Moving on to William Jackson.
Didn't know we're going down that hole this morning. You never know what you're going to get on this podcast. But anyway, back to the topic there. It's something now to root for with Steven Sims. If he has a nice run of 9 games here, not only as a returner, but as a slot guy, because he is a restricted free agent, it'll be very, very easy to tender him and get him back. And then maybe once again, that prevents you from having to spend a draft pick, or at least a top 4 or 5 round draft pick on the wide receiver position.
Flipping over to the defense with William Jackson, defensive coaches speaking, including DB's coach Grady Brown, DC Terrell Austin, and William Jackson himself speaking to the media. Don't know if we really learned a whole lot other than Austin saying it's feasible and probably likely, my words, not his, on the latter, that Jackson will start and play in the Week 10 game against the Saints. And obviously, Tomlin talked about, they know him pretty well. They liked him coming out of the draft. And as they often do, they try to get those guys they liked back in the pre-draft process. And so that's the story on William Jackson.
Yeah, long physical guy that can still run. That's not great in zone, and stuff. I think where you're asked to do a lot of pattern match in zone. So if they, I think what they're kind of hoping for here is getting them when they got him. He has some bye week time here to kind of study up some things, and I would expect them to try to use him in as many type of man situations as possible, or if in end zone, just flat out, kind of that base cover 2 zone or cover 3 zone type of stuff there. So I don't think they're going to get too intricate with him. They're going to play to his strengths. I think Mike Tomlin even talked about, hey, none of them ever want to talk about how they were used anywhere else and whether or not they were used right or wrong or whatnot. But, Mike Tomlin and I think the rest of the coaching staff feels comfortable that they know him because of the pre-draft process and scouting him that way. And then obviously having to play him twice a year pre-game scout him when he was with the Bengals there. So, this is another guy this is a 9-game run now where you try to find out as much as you can about him, if he still has anything in the tank, if he kind of can fit the things that you ask him to do. And maybe this is an acquisition that will keep you from spending a top 3 or 4 draft pick on a cornerback then.
I thought it was a little interesting that, Ron Rivera, the head coach of the Washington Commanders, said it wasn't a good scheme fit in Washington, that he needs to go to a man-heavy type team. Although when you look at the numbers, Washington is one of the more man-heavy teams in football. Pittsburgh does run more man coverage, but only by about 6%. I believe Pittsburgh is something like 3rd or 4th or 5th in man coverage. Washington sitting around 10th, give or take a spot or 2. And so I don't know how much that changes necessarily. Although I will say I don't have exact numbers on Washington. I know Pittsburgh plays a large amount of cover 1 and cover 3. And with cover 3, a lot of times that just becomes, carrying stuff vertical, kind of becomes a man coverage if number 1's going to run vertical. So although that may be technically zone, it can function as man if receivers break vertically. So I think maybe there'll be some more value for Jackson in that. Pittsburgh does still play a fair amount of single high coverage and trust its corners to do a lot on islands. So we'll see how it goes overall. As you said, a test run and a very, low cost in terms of trade value, giving up essentially nothing just to rent with the option to buy, which is your phrase, which I like, on Jackson for the rest of the season.
I think they're just tired of getting beat up over their heads, aren't they?
I think so. Again, when Tomlin has an opportunity to get a pedigree guy that he liked coming out, they've had injuries there. Witherspoon has been a big disappointment. Wallace's injury, don't know the status of, obviously enough to cause him to miss the Eagles game. I think they wanted to make that move for, pretty cheap.
Who does this act with, assuming everybody gets healthy here and look, you're going to have to find a spot for Casey on this roster. Who's that going to be? Is that going to be Josh Jackson probably?
It would look like it, yes.
All right, so let's assume, which is dangerous to do, but let's assume Casey gets activated a week from
Thursday, I believe is the deadline.
Thursday, okay. Let's assume that happens, and Josh Jackson is the one that the roster spot, is let go, and you probably try to circle him back to the practice squad, I would guess. But who's the odd man out now, or is there, or will there be an odd man out? You think there's probably going to be at least one inactive defensive back, right?
A defensive back. I mean, they'd all been active before, right? And so if you just swap Casey for Jackson, well, there's been so many injuries, though, it's kind of been hard to tell. I'd have to do the math.
Let's roll through it. Kendrick Green.
Yep.
All right. Mason Rudolph.
Yes.
Mark Robinson.
Yes.
We got two more.
At least two more. There's elevations to consider, right? But just at least five, right?
And you're not going to elevate probably unless injuries. So there's
right.
Probably
well, I'm thinking
five
about long term, but yeah, let's just go with five for now. So we got three.
How many defensive linemen are they going to dress moving forward here?
That's a good point. I mean, they've been dressing them all since Leal went down. Well, okay. Watt comes back too, which will dump Ryan Anderson, we believe.
You would think.
Okay, so forget about that.
You would still be dressing all outside linebackers.
Right. I'm just doing the math on the other roster move there as well.
You don't have the extra wide receiver now, right?
Right. Yeah. So it wouldn't be, Gunner going down in all likelihood. You have five. You're going to dress five. Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know for sure. I have to think through it. I don't know who the other two would be right now, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm. Could it be I guess what I'm getting at is, could it be a Kello because he doesn't?
Sure.
He doesn't have the special teams value for you.
Right. I understand. I think in terms of odd men out in this situation, I think it is going to be Witherspoon. No coincidence they're trading for a corner after benching Witherspoon in his repeated struggles this year. So I think the way it would look would be Jackson and Sutton as your base corners. And then if Sutton never plays inside and sub package, then Levi Wallace comes on the field to replace on the outside. So it'll be Jackson, Wallace on the outside, Sutton inside. Of course, Millette can play inside and some more early down stuff with Jackson and Sutton on the outside. And then you have James Pierre as a backup there. So that's probably the way
Pierre
to go.
plays can play special teams for you.
Starting gunner. So he'll stay up.
Right.
Yeah. But then, okay, even if it's Witherspoon, who's the fifth? Yeah, one more, don't you?
Yeah, you would be correct. Let's see. Let me pull up a roster real quick here.
I mean, obviously injuries and those things can always dictate, what happens. I was thinking kicker, but Skiba went back down to the practice squad. So he's in elevation right now. So he's not actually counting.
Right.
So I don't know who the fifth guy there would be. I mean, maybe it would be a Alu. I wouldn't be shocked if they're going to make some changes there. He's not played well this year. Kim Hayward was playing nose tackle last week. Ogunjobi will return. It probably returns against the Saints in week 10. So maybe something there.
Yeah, because you're right. Because we'll have to watch the status of Ogunjobi because he was down this past week there. So it would probably be a defensive lineman and a cornerback then.
That makes sense. I mean, again, just trying to track this thing out, guessing at some health situations. I mean, again, usually there's an injury that puts an inactive for you mid-season, but we'll see.
So what does it say about if and once again, injuries can change your inactive list on a week-to-week basis there, but let's assume Witherspoon is the odd man out and is the odd man out for at least 5 or 6 games. What does that do to his status? Next, in the off season there.
Sure. Nothing good. I mean, you could really overhaul your cornerback room because Jackson, he'll have to play really well to be on this team in 2023. Witherspoon certainly way up in the air. Cam Sutton's a free agent. So, there could be some big changes, big movement there.
The approach with now that we've kind of looked a little bit at William Jackson, I mean, it's really a wait and see kind of thing here now. I mean, it's a 9-game run for him to show enough to warrant keeping around at that price tag.
I think Jonathan Heitritter did a great job breaking him down, and you see a lot of highs, a lot of lows in his game. Anytime he can man up one-on-one, he can still look like that really strong, man cover corner with good length and closing ability. But you see some really bad reps whenever he's a very stiff hip kind of guy, and you see him just really lose his balance quite a bit and looks really uncomfortable playing off coverage and playing zone. So Pittsburgh still plays zone about 60% of the time. The thing people have to understand is there's only, I believe, one team in football, the Giants, that play man coverage more than half the time. It's still a zone world overall. Most teams can't man up for the majority of a game and try to win. So, Jackson's still going to have to get more comfortable in zone coverage because you're still going to run it at least, half the time in a given game. And so that's a thought that shouldn't be lost on people.
And Jackson should be okay physically, as far as defending a run on the outside and coming up and making tackles.
Right. Although I believe it was Tyler Weiss that pointed out that reminded me and us of Jackson being the one who didn't push Le'Veon Bell out of bounds against the Bengals. That was Jackson, right? So, but that blemish aside, yeah, I think he'll be, physical enough.
Okay.
Anything else from the defensive coaches who spoke? Grady Brown, Brian Flores. No Carl Dunbar. I always like to hear from Carl Dunbar. Did not get to hear from him. Terrell Austin speaking as well. Anything those guys said catch your attention, Dave?
Yeah, not overly, and they look. The Austin was asked about, you didn't do enough with T.J. Watt, out, and I mean that's a layered question. I mean the team really didn't do enough. I mean did we really think that they were going to be able to scheme this thing up with the person? And they tried, and they lost. I think he even mentioned, we had Leal doing a couple of different things, but in over time, how would that have played out? Even if Leal had not missed, it's been what has he missed? Last 2 games because of
just the Bucks game, so a couple games,
right? So I hate that Leal was their kind of ace in the hole, if you will, but this defense is just the personnel, the depth, and everything was just not built to. It's hard to replace Superman anyway, and he was kind of peppered with questions on that. And I think hopefully they learned a valuable lesson, something that we've been screaming for the last 2 years. Right, got to have better depth. You got to have 3 guys that can rush the passer at that outside linebacker position. Plain and simple. The Derek Tuskas, the Jameer Jones, and I understand him going out and at least making an effort on Malik Reed, but you and I kind of had our questions about that immediately after that deal was made. And in Malik Reed's defense, he had, I think, his best game this past week, but even that's, from what we've seen, that just becomes not so much a Ritz cracker, if you will, but it was a little bit better for him. So
it was.
But this defense will look dramatically different if they can get Watt on the field and then supplement in some of that DeMonte Casey that we thought maybe we might be able to see coming out of the preseason.
Yeah, I think it'll, in a sense, Watt's return simplifies this defense because they were using so many different packages, so many different groupings, understandably so, to try to, maximize as much talent on the roster as they could, to rotate guys, to keep guys fresh, and not put replacing TJ Watt on one man, an impossible task. So I think it'll, you won't see really as much the 3 inside linebacker package, maybe the 3-3-5 less often because those packages only had 1 outside linebacker on the field. So in terms of just simplifying the defense, allowing guys to play fast, I think that'll be a benefit of TJ Watt's return beyond the obvious getting TJ Watt back. I think with Malik Reed, it is at least important to acknowledge. I mean, I don't think it's a coincidence he's played a bit better as of late, as he's kind of gotten more integrated in this system, more comfortable with the scheme. I know that what Denver has run in the past and what Pittsburgh runs is semi-similar, but still, anytime you get traded to a new team, last second, right before the year begins, there's a learning curve to that. And then, 2 weeks in, now you're replacing TJ Watt. That's a tough spot to be in from Malik Reed. But I think Pittsburgh, they are normally successful when they have bigger, stronger outside linebackers. When they go with smaller, skinnier guys, they don't set the edge quite as well, that aren't as powerful. They don't win as often. When you think about the history of Pittsburgh Steelers edge rushers that have been really successful, it's TJ Watt, it's Alex Highsmith, it's Lamar Woodley, it's James Harrison, it's Joey Porter. It's guys who were big and strong and ultra physical. And that's, I think, where Pittsburgh missed the mark.
Right. I mean, I think we've seen the ceiling on Malik Reed, though.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think it's not worked out. And there's a reason why this team has used a lot of their 3 inside linebacker packages and their 3-3-5 because they don't want to overexpose Malik Reed to playing 50 snaps a game. They want to try to manage his snap count and keep it down. And then depth behind that was non-existent with Ryan Anderson and Jameer Jones and guys like that. So, but again, I think Watt's return simplifies the defense into more of its core concepts. And, obviously getting Watt back is it's big for being able to, in theory and hopefully, on paper and in practice, rush 4, drop 7. It'll cause offenses to slide at TJ Watt, create more one-on-one chances for Cam Hayward, and Alex Highsmith should benefit a little bit as well. Speaking of Highsmith, you mentioned on Twitter, I believe on Thursday, that what's the number on him to get to 20 career sacks? You fill in the details, Dave.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you go down the old stat head rabbit hole, and I know
our pastime.
I know you find yourself you don't mean to, but then you end up an hour and 10 minutes later playing with that filter a little bit there. But he's got 14 and a half, and all this is kind of, let me set this up, it's kind of predicated because obviously the Dolphins traded for Bradley Chubb, and then they turned around and gave him a 5-year extension, which on paper at least, and I haven't checked this morning to see if all the details came out on that. It looks like, at least the way it's being represented on Twitter and a few sites so far, is that it's a $22 million new money average deal for him. And it got me thinking, well, we've talked several times, what potentially might be Alex Highsmith's market value if he were to get extended next offseason. Anyway, went down that rabbit hole, and he obviously has right now 14 and a half sacks for his career, 6.5 on the season. He needs 5.5 more to hit 20 for his career. And obviously this is his 3rd year. So I went looking, I was, doing the math of, man, what happens if he does hit 20 sacks and look, I mean, it's realistic, right? If you get the TJ Watt back that you think that you're going to get back, that should help Alex Highsmith back on that other side, right? So
sure.
Is it out of the question for Alex Highsmith to get 5.5 more sacks this season in 9 games? No,
he had 6.5 the first 8 games. He could easily get 5.5. His sacks tend to come in bunches, so he's a guy that can get 2.5 in a game and get halfway there after one Sunday.
All right, let's say he can hit that 20 mark, and that's what I think. That's another thing. If you're looking for something to kind of root for in these final 9 games, I think Alex Highsmith getting at least 5.5 more sacks. If he hits the 20 mark, Alex, he will be the 5th player since 1982 to have 20 or more for the Steelers, 20 or more sacks in his first 3 seasons. He would join the likes of Keith Willis, Joey Porter, Lamar Woodley, and of course TJ Watt. So that's not a bad group to have yourself in. Now, obviously you've got the 2 extra games these last 2 seasons and all that goes along with it. But even and props to Stathead Pro Football Reference, I think they've gone all the way back and they've got some of these sacks updated pre-sacks being a stat, right?
Yeah, they've gone back. I forget what the timeline is, but since at least I want to say the merger in 1970, they have the unofficial stats there. So they did that project a couple of years ago. To me, I recognize that stuff as official because of the work those guys put in.
Right. And man, if you like stats like Alex and I do, and we've got several of us subscribed to Stathead, and we don't gain anything from it from telling you this, but if you like, that's a great service to have for the price there. But even going back, and using the pre-1982 stuff and all, you've got TJ Watt, Lamar Woodley, Dwight White, Joe Green, Ernie Holmes, Joey Porter, Keith Willis are the players in their first 3 seasons who had 20 or more sacks. So
talk about some names,
man. I agree. And while going through this, on top of it there, and this is going to be an off-season project, I think, for me, or something to write about. Do you know much about Ben McGee?
Yeah, he played for the Steelers back in the 50s, I want to say.
60s.
2-way play, 60s, okay. Yeah, I mean, I know the name a little bit. I think he played both sides. I couldn't tell you a lot about him. Probably should bring in David O on that one. But yeah, I know the name.
That's someone that kind of he had 19 and a half sacks, bless his heart, through his first 3 seasons, which was 1964 to 1966, and just somebody that I've got notated in my notes to look deeper into his career at some point, maybe during the offseason there. But back to Alex Highsmith here. Man, if he hits 20 sacks, I mean, and look, sacks aren't everything. Pressure rates are, and I think we need to see Alex Highsmith's pressure rate increase, especially with TJ Watt back, and hopefully it will. But I think Alex Highsmith can get himself into a nice situation where, he could see a payday next offseason, a pretty decent one at that.
I mean, what number would you kind of gauge it at now? Do you think he really could hit Chubb money? Because that feels still a little too pricey for me.
No, I mean, I don't think he can hit the 22 million mark, but the first thing when running over and looking at the edge rushers and the hierarchy and all of that, is 15 to 18 out of the question? 15 to 18 million, somewhere in that range?
No, I don't think so. That's probably what I'm thinking roughly right now, provided he has a 10+ sack season.
And you throw that stuff out there and you get people saying, man, good luck to him. But the pushback is, I don't think people want to see Alex Highsmith earning $15 to $18 million. But
it's a big number. I mean, the gut instinct is, whoa, that's a lot of money, because it is a lot of money.
Right. But I mean, you got the inflation and all that goes along with it. I mean,
right. The cap's going to go up big in the upcoming next couple of years, right?
Right. And who else right now, not that you're, who else would be in line maybe for an extension? A very lucrative extension. Claypool's gone, and it wasn't like that was going to happen anyway. But now it's most definitely not going to happen. I don't think Kevin Dotson's going to get himself in that position right now. So really, I think it comes down to Alex Highsmith, right?
I think so. No other name coming to mind right now. And for Highsmith, I mean, there's a benefit to the player getting a deal done earlier, before his contract's officially up. But if he's going to take a deal before a year out before free agency, he's going to want to get paid well, because he doesn't want to have a big, 13 sack season and take below market deal that summer before. He's got the leverage of, I could play this season out, have another really strong season. I'll bet on myself and try to hit the open market after 2023. So if you're going to pay the guy, you got to pay him well to convince him to do that long-term deal early.
So I think that's what you're at least and I'll get into this deeper after the season goes. And he's got, I think part of this is you really would like to see him get at least 5.5 more sacks, right?
Yeah, of course.
And, this is a lot of assuming going on here, but if he can get 5.5 more sacks, at least this season, if the pressure rate is acceptable and those sacks are more on the higher quality type side of there, then I really think that you got to look at maybe potentially him in that 15 to possibly $18 million new money average range.
Yeah, it makes sense. I know he's been pretty quiet the last 2 games. He faced some really strong left tackles in Armstead in Miami and Mailata in Philadelphia, but you want to see him maybe elevate his game a bit more against top flight competition. He had a couple of pressures against Philadelphia, but Jalen Hurts, as he does, scrambled away from a couple of those chances.
And even if that's in your plan, it doesn't prevent you from addressing the edge position early in the draft, because you got to have that third guy, man. And whether it's the Alabama Will Anderson.
I was just going to ask, hypothetically, let's say Pittsburgh has the opportunity. They're picking 1 through 3, somewhere in there, and Anderson's on the board. I know it's an early question. Neither of us have really watched him, closely, but everybody knows the talent that Anderson has. He had 31 tackles for loss and 17 sacks last year, one of the best seasons ever for a defensive player in college football. I won't make you say, do you do it or not, but do you consider it if he's available to you? Absolutely,
I do, because you can never, me, and give me edge rushers, tight ends, and guards. Oh my, yeah, I think you really have to consider it, because you can. Part of the downfall here is you've got to have. and TJ Watt getting older, and even if you decide that Highsmith's the guy that you want to lock up a longer term there, you still got to have that other guy there, and you're going to have him on his the new kid on his rookie contract for at least 3 seasons before you extend him. And if he's the best player at the position at a position that's got to get after the quarterback, then hell yeah, I still go after that.
I would say, though, and I don't want to debate this too much because it's early November and these are all pure hypotheticals, and I have a suspicion Pittsburgh won't really have a chance to draft Will Anderson this year. But if you draft him, can you still pay Alex Highsmith? I don't know if you can, because are you going to have – it feels like you can't sign Highsmith later that summer after drafting Anderson to eventually start be a priority guy.
It definitely would be a decision, and that's why, thankfully, the draft comes – before, because if they did anything with Highsmith, they wouldn't do it until next summer.
Right. But I don't know how you could draft Anderson in April and then sign Highsmith to a 4-year deal in August.
Sure.
I don't know how that would work.
Unless it's a very friendly deal, because
right.
once again,
he's not going to take a friendly deal. They draft Will Anderson. He's not like, I'll take a discount after you just drafted the guy to replace me.
Right. But what I'm saying is, if he doesn't hit the 20 sack mark and,
right.
Maybe his market value comes in, under 15 million,
Yeah, I think if you draft Anderson or any edge rusher in the first round, that kind of says, Highsmith, we're going to let this thing play out. And if you have a really good year and our pick isn't doing so hot, then we'll just tag you. I don't know if I think that kind of takes a long-term deal off the table. But again, those are all hypotheticals. And I 100% agree to the point of this team needs to invest in more capital than you may think in depth at the edge position, maybe a 3rd-round pick, maybe something like that, because they have been playing with fire too much with poor depth behind Watt and Highsmith, and they've been burned each of the last 2 seasons.
Right. And, look, even the way this offensive line is, though, right now, look, and I haven't studied Anderson enough. I would think that he's a guy that you're probably not going to want to pass if you get an opportunity at him and all. And who knows where you're going to draft in this thing. But it's definitely a position, like you said, in the top three rounds of this thing. They better get them another young edge rusher, regardless of what their plans may or may not be with Alex Highsmith.
And I know some people will say, well, you can't spend a draft pick on him because you got to draft X, Y, and Z. But I don't see how you could do a free agent route, because who are you going to convince to come in and sign with the Steelers for a reasonable amount of money to be a backup, a rotational guy that didn't work well with Ingram? I think it's a lot harder to find and get that free agent name as opposed to a draft pick that's younger, cheaper, and has no choice but to be a rotational guy.
Sure.
So that's my thought there. All right, Dave. I know Were
you surprised? Were you surprised to see that list of 20? Did that enlighten anything?
Yeah, well, I listened to your terrible take yesterday on the topic. I thought it was a really good take on the situation, and so I certainly hope that Highsmith joins those names. And yeah, that is one heck of a list.
Boy, if he hits 20 sacks and you end up drafting, let's say you end up drafting a guy there because Alex Highsmith's going to qualify for a level 1 proven performance escalator. So that will get him around a raise to around the 3 million mark around in there. But I don't think he pulls a Deontay Johnson, or I don't think he's in that level unless you just really bust out here and 10 more sacks in the last 9 games or what have you there. But he's going to be chomping at a bit to get some sort of deal, you would think.
Certainly. And I love your Ben McGee reference. Anytime we get the old-timey Steelers on there, it's a good day for the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess, though, because do you kind of recognize the unofficial sack stats as official based on the work PFL has done?
I do
as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I do.
Although I think that means we have to recognize that TJ Watt didn't actually tie the sack record last year, because Al Bubba Baker of the Lions had 23 and a half, I believe it is, for the Detroit in 78 or 79 unofficially. Okay. And so I guess we have to be consistent with that. He sells ribs now. I don't know if you know about that. He sells Al Bubba Baker's ribs. He was on Shark Tank. Anyone who watches Shark Tank, an old episode there. Anyway, totally random rabbit hole to send you down briefly there. But go look up Al Bubba Baker.
Now here's the thing, though. Some of this stuff written, it's not like they have all the film to go back. You're going on kind of a lot of loose game books, I think.
Well, I don't know how they did it. I think they have a list of like 99% of the sacks since 78 or something like that.
They're doing it off game books with a quarterback tackle behind the line of scrimmage because they're and I would imagine probably either the league or the Pro Football Hall of Fame helped them out with some of those old game books.
Yeah, I don't know exactly. They had a big explanation on it whenever they unveiled that a while back, but it's thorough, and I trust them and the work those guys put in. Anyway, I know it feels like forever ago, but let's talk about that Eagles game from last Sunday. And we never really talked about the all-22 aspect of it because on Monday's show it hadn't come out yet. Then on our emergency show late Tuesday, it was very trade deadline focused. So I know we won't spend a lot of time on it because I'm sure most people have moved past from it. But any kind of final thoughts on that all-22 from the Eagles loss?
Yeah, they couldn't run block for never could get the run game going, and on top of it there, and this is something that we brought up in I think two separate times here. You got your quarterback playing 10 to 14 points down. He's facing a lot of zone at that point. Now he missed. There was probably a good 5 throws, I think, that maybe Kenny Pickett missed on top of it. The penalties just brutal when you're behind like that and you're trying to put long drives together on top of it. I mean, everything that could possibly not go the way that you wanted it to go. It goes back to what we said before the season even started here. This team's got to be able to run the football. The defense has got to keep the score down in here. And then this Steelers team, when they get inside the red zone, they've got to capitalize. And a young team with a young quarterback that's trying to put together 12 play drives, the penalties will just throw you behind the 8 ball in a hurry. And then when you get behind on the scoreboard like you did, the man type situations and situations that are more conducive to throwing the football, pushing the football down the field aren't there. There really becomes more situations to maybe hit the holes in like cover 3 more towards the middle of the field or cover 2 type situation zones. And those opportunities were there for Kenny Pickett. But in the opportunities that he had, he either didn't make the throw, B made a throw that was off target, or C threw one like the situation with Freiermuth later on in the game, even though it was kind of insignificant at that point, that the defender was in a good place and tipped the football and ends up in an interception there. But the fact that this team is having problems running and really didn't have many opportunities to run because they got down on the scoreboard really hurt them.
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway I have that people would still care about is I thought this was probably Kenny Pickett's worst game of the season. Even though the interceptions were down and maybe the box score doesn't look quite as bad as some of the ones that have been more interception heavy, and those always need context. But I just didn't think he saw the field well against zone. I thought his accuracy wasn't as good as it had been. I thought his decision making was worse. I think he was a little tentative. Even the play before the interception to Freiermuth, which I really wasn't mad about. It was a good throw, right decision to throw that football. Edwards just made a heck of a play to tip that pass. The play before, it's a little debatable, but Chase Claypool settling underneath zone. He's pretty open. He wants the ball. His hands are straight up in the air. He's asking for the football. Pickett sees it, decides to check it down to, I believe, Jalen Warren for a 2-yard gain. The linebackers all over him. Next play then is the interception to Freiermuth. I just thought overall, in terms of not seeing Hotz, the one sack that he took from that nickel corner blitz, never even sees it, although the corner wasn't hiding the blitz at all. I mean, he is tight off the end. It's clear he's rushing. Really, that ball should have been snapped right away because you got 2 receivers to the top with one cornerback begging for somebody to come over and help him because they're running the nickel blitz there. Pickett never even sees it. Boykin would have been open on the hot underneath. I just don't think Pickett, and I understand the situation sucked, no run game, playing from behind, good Eagles team, good pass rush, all those things considered and factored in. I still thought Pickett did not play well in this game, and I probably will do a video on this early in the week because I just want to highlight some areas he has to improve.
Yeah, look, and like I said, there was a couple of throws that he probably should have made past the 10-yard mark.
Yeah.
More toward the middle of the field, and when you go look at the passing chart on it too, 5 of those incompletions I think were down to the left. Were more of his deeper throws in that game, and all of them were incomplete. Now the red zone miss to Deontay Johnson. If Deontay Johnson doesn't slip on sort of that kind of jerk in out route there, does the throw even, because of the way the coverage was, and they do have a good secondary there, the Eagles and all, but does that throw even make it to him if Deontay doesn't slip coming out of that?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I'm not going to put that one on Pickett. Johnson's footing was not great. He needed new cleats. He slipped later in that game too. So whatever cleats they gave him, not working in that game. There was even the throw on the double move to Deontay left side that fell incomplete, where that's the structure of the play. Pickett was, I think the goal in this game was to look off the safety. So Pickett was really trying to do that. But on that play, if you can think back to it, Steven Sims is pretty open down the middle of the field. I understand why Pickett didn't throw it, because the structure of the play is look right, come back left, throw to Deontay on that curl and up, out and up, whatever you want to call it. But sometimes you got to start working outside of structure. If that opportunity presents itself, you probably have to try to pull the trigger to Sims there. So something else for Pickett to work on is playing maybe outside the framework of the play whenever something becomes available.
Right, and he's going to need more snaps. I mean, and that's what this season has become now, is get this guy looking at so many different situations and seeing the defenses and getting more comfortable on seeing decisions that he should have made and see if he doesn't repeat the same mistakes, kind of thing there. Look, and not excusing some of these interceptions for him have been kind of unfortunate, right?
Sure. I mean, I don't know how many, but probably at least half of them.
But they're still interceptions, and you don't. I mean, it's still on your ledger there, if you will. And I know a lot of people want to point to look at his interceptions, but I mean, a few of these, I don't want to say are excusable, but if you add context to them, they're. He's accurate. You just want to see that accuracy downfield more. I mean, he should be accurate when his average intended air yards is, what is it, 5.8, 6.2, something like that. I mean, his completed air yard distance in that game against the Eagles was like 2 point something there. So I'm not concerned about his accuracy. I'm more concerned right now about his decision making and his ability to connect downfield right now.
Yeah, again, the interceptions, they got to get cleaned up. I mean, just overall, and it's very simple, nuts and bolts. Got to put more points on the board. Got to cut down the turnovers. I mean, that has to change, obviously, going forward for this thing to work. You can't be an offense that's putting up 10 points a game and throwing multiple picks a game on average and expect to win, things to go well and the pick to turn out the way that you want it to. So it's obvious stuff, and context is important. And, not all the issues for this offense and for this team fall at Pickett's feet, but those numbers have to change, and change sooner than later.
And as I've stated a few times now, the thing that I really want to see is, because of this offense and your trips down into the red zone are going to be very, very limited. That's one of the main things I think I'm really looking for in the second half of this season with him is, man, you got to cash in on those red zone trips. And especially, if you're going to throw the football in those situations there, he's got to get much better in the red zone here. And if we can see that, I think that'll be something to build on. He had 6.3 intended air yard distance against the Eagles. But his completed air yard distance was just 2.2 yards.
Yeah, not winning football, obviously. So, but again, I want him to keep playing.
David Carr, by the way, had an 7.7 intended air yard distance in their game in Week 8, and a completed air yard distance of 1.1 yards.
Derek Carr. You said David. I didn't know where you were going
Derek.
Okay, I thought you were going back to the Texans game that they upset Pittsburgh in.
I still get my cars mixed up after all these years.
That's all right. Wow, 1 point. What did you say? 1.8.
1.1 completed air yard distance.
Well, they got shut out right in that game, so I guess that makes sense overall. But certainly, I want Pickett to keep playing. I want him to work through it. I'm not calling for his benching. Again, we're analyzing, not concluding. But that was my analysis of him against the Eagles. I think his worst game of the season.
And they've got to figure during this bye week, they've got to figure out a way to start running the ball somewhat better.
What's your view? And I think I know the answer to this because I saw you tweet it out yesterday, but your view of the whole Jaylen Warren situational football in relation to Najee Harris are Warren's stats being skewed by garbage time situations? What's your take on that?
How stats are, you can frame them a lot of different ways here. I still think when you look at, I want successful runs. If it's 3rd and 2, I want 2 yards. If I get 20, great. If it's 1st down and 10, I want 4.5 yards or more on that run. If it's 2nd and 6, I want 3 or more yards. Any run of 6 yards or more is obviously should be considered a successful run as well too. You look at and the thing is with Warren, his DYOA doesn't have enough carries to qualify. But I think if you start looking at the extended at the advanced metrics here, Warren is a better player regardless of situation because DVOA and all like that takes into account situations, on average across the league there. I think Warren's been the better back top to bottom. Now, I'm not sitting here saying Najee needs to go to the bench. It should be 2-1 Warren here, but I think you've got to make a concerted effort. And if indeed Najee's still got something that he's dealing with here, I still think there should be opportunities to get Jaylen Warren more touches in this thing.
I got to pull the numbers on how many snaps is Warren seeing on 1st and 2nd down, because to go back to Eddie Faulkner's comment, he wants him to play about 30% of the snaps. Warren's now the 3rd down back, has been for over a month now. And so that's getting a good chunk of snaps there in 3rd down, obvious pass situations. But I'm just curious how many snaps he's getting on early downs. I'm sure it's a lower number, but I don't know how low that number is.
Right. I think you need to, carve out maybe another full series, for Warren at least.
Yeah, I get that. Like I said, I think schematically, just based on where this offense is at, the needs of the offense, you need somebody that's a bit more downhill, a bit more north-south. And, if you build this offensive line and get a really good line, I think Najee can still have a lot of success behind it. Of course, most running backs can, but I just think maybe it's a bit better tailored to Najee's style. And when your offensive line is struggling, the holes aren't really there, you're just kind of looking for a guy that gets downhill, pushes the pile, and keeps his legs churning.
Which one of these, with the way things are with these 5 up front with this line right now, which one is most likely to pop you an explosive run?
Which back, Warren or Najee?
Yeah.
I mean, neither are like home run hitters, but I think Warren has that north-south ability that, if that hole's ever there, he's going to find it and hit it.
Right. And with the state of this team right now, that's what I would be concentrating on.
If you had to make one change along the offensive line, not in terms of replacing somebody for a current backup, but if let's say you go into the offseason and you could only make one change along the offensive line, where would you start? Is kind of what I'm trying to ask. Where do you think this starts? And don't give me a yes. I know you're going to say yes, but
yes.
Give me one name that you would start with fixing this offensive line.
Oh man,
I'll give you mine real quick. Off the top.
I think it's Cole, man.
I'm going to say Dotson.
Yeah, and I understand why, but I think you need, and we talked about this maybe on the live. I forget maybe the other day we talked about it, but I think it starts in the middle of that line.
I get that. I just want that really good guard and Dotson's play. I think with Cole, you can still, with a serviceable center, I think you can make it work. You need that really good guard to, I think, be that anchor, that Alan Faneca, guy that leads that group, David DeCastro guy that helped leads that group. And Dotson has the talent. He's flash, but it's just been so frustrating, so inconsistent. His technique to me is kind of a mess. And I think we'll see how the rest of the year plays out. Maybe he turns it around, but I just think it's time to turn the page probably on him. And I think that's probably where I would start with fixing this offensive line.
Well, the thing is you still got another year with him anyway, so he can become, if you did address the guard position, then he could easily slide into a backup role with experience, at a cheap rate there. So it's not like he's all for loss if you went that route in 2023. But you look at you take that game last night, for example, and the Houston's got some pedigree on that line, right, of theirs. But it's depressing every game that you turn on. It seems like, man, look at them running the football there and doing it with either undrafted backs.
I know you're going to do it. I saw your tweet last night.
Or fourth round backs, And look, you're not going to, now that you have, why are first and second round backs usually at the top of the rushing charts? Because they're first and second round backs.
No, it's because they're good. I mean, you're not inherently at the top of the charts because you're first or second round. Nick Chubb is an amazing
They're
back.
not going to sit those guys.
They have. Trent Richardson got traded.
You're talking about a few and far between type situation here.
Yeah, but Nick Chubb isn't playing because he's a top round pick. He's playing because he's
Nick
one
Chubb's
of the best backs in football.
Yeah, he's a fine back.
That's why he's playing. If he sucked, he wouldn't be playing. They play Kareem Hunt.
How would Nick Chubb be able? Nick Chubb would have more yards right now playing behind this Steelers line if he was the running back.
Yeah, I mean, he's I think the most talented back in football.
Okay, I don't care who he is. I don't spend a first round draft. And it just goes back to what I said. There's no, my whole issue with the whole, this isn't against Najee Harris. It's about the because of the abuse that position takes on top of it too. That's why you have situations where you have the fourth round kids and the undrafted kids getting time, is because it's a brutal position. Sure. On top of it, and just the overall fungibility versus the overall draft slotted value of the position is something that I've screamed for years now. That's why you don't spend a first round draft pick on a running back.
No, I get that. I mean, and if that's a stance, that's fine. I'm not even necessarily against that, but I don't think you see top round picks. They may play early to find out if they're good or not. But, Josh Jacobs, for example, former first round pick, the word was he was going to be on the outs this year. New regime coming in,
but he was in. And the reason he was sat down because he was injured, and that's my point. These guys get banged up.
I know, but my point is that Jacobs was. It felt like he was going to be on the outs because of the new regime coming in, but he's played very well this year, and he's playing a ton this year because of it. He's earned the right to be the Raiders' lead guy again. So they're not giving him the carries just because he's a first-round pick. I mean, what running back in football that's a top-round pick is getting carries just because he's a top-round pick and not because he's actually playing well? Name me one running back in that situation right now.
I'd have to pull up a list here.
Yeah, I don't know of many. Again, there may be some guys that are very early in their career. Maybe Najee Harris is probably the name to talk about right now. Because I don't know. I mean, Dalvin Cook, Jonathan Taylor, Nick Chubb, Josh Jacobs. They mentioned Derrick Henry. I mean, all those guys are top round picks, and they're playing a lot because they're playing well, because they're really talented running backs.
I mean, it's very rare now for you to see a running back go his first 3 seasons in the NFL and not miss some sort of time due to injury. Look at poor Jonathan Taylor right now.
Sure. I'm not disputing that. I'm just disagreeing with the point of the top round picks are playing solely because they're top round picks and the team feels like they have to play them. If there's any situation that applies to, though, it's probably in Pittsburgh right now.
Okay. Don't spend a first round draft pick on a running back.
That Dameon Pierce kid, though, I don't know how he only got the ball 106 times, whatever it was at Florida. I mean, that guy should have been their lead dog.
Jonathan Heitrick will probably tell you a lot about it. I think he's friends with him. So, yeah. A lot of people, I think, consider it malpractice at that. But then again, not having that wear and tear in college with all those carries maybe has helped Dameon Pierce at the NFL level, right?
I bet. Yeah, I think there's a value to that in terms of the longevity of his career.
He really looked good. I mean, they lost, but there's been some games with him that he's really looked good.
He has, and I think he's in a good situation in Houston. He's a warm weather back. I watched him at the Senior Bowl, and it was because it gets cold down at the Senior Bowl, and he looked uncomfortable the one day it was freezing with a big hoodie on and sleeves. So I think him in Houston is a good thing for him, and obviously the Texans are very happy with their pick there, and my fantasy teams are happy as well. I think didn't you take him in one of your drafts?
Yeah, I got him. Yeah, I had him going in a league last night. I would have liked to see him get in the end zone, but. I mean, look at somebody. Chubb's missed some time already in his career, right?
I'm not disputing the running backs get hurt.
Jacobs, I think even Miles Sanders has missed some time. Travis Etienne's obviously missed a good chunk of his rookie season. Dalvin Cook. I mean.
Sure, I'm not disputing running backs get hurt. I've never disagreed with that notion. It's the nature of the position. I'm with you.
Okay.
Anyway, so we'll see how this thing plays out the rest of the way. With Warren, I think there's probably got to be some way to get him on the field more on early downs because I don't have the exact numbers, but I think the majority of his snaps are probably coming on third down situations.
I just think you need to find a way to get him on the field more.
Yeah, I hear that. And you mentioned Pony, and maybe with Claypool trade, maybe they do some different stuff. I mean, I know in camp when they would use Pony, it was always with a wing, and McFarland would come running across on some jet plays. You're not going to do that with Najee or Jaylen Warren, but you could split these guys out. Najee's somebody they can split out and play in space, and Warren could be in the backfield. So that's probably something that I wouldn't hate trying out and seeing how that looks.
And unfortunately, too, you get in situations like you get with the Eagles. You have been in several times these last, Buffalo game and all like that. You get in the second half, you running a lot of 11 personnel at that point. It's just you don't even get a chance to really do a lot of stuff with two tight end stuff.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. Game script has certainly changed the structure of this team probably more than what they would like. All right, Dave. I do want to get to our reader email portion of the show a bit later. We want to hit as many emails as we can. But before we do that, let's hear from our friends at MyBookie before we make our Week 9 picks. And I believe we're both 0-1. The Texans just barely covered last night.
Yeah, I got worried about that game last night on that opening drive when the Texans went down and scored. I had a feeling I was going to take the L on that one. It was the line I think earlier in the day had been 14 points on that. Then it dropped down to even 13.5, and I kind of figured that surely the Eagles can cover that, but they didn't. Let's see. Sports and you pick winners all the time. So why not get paid for them at MyBookie? MyBookie has the biggest online selection of odds and contests for all your sports betting needs, anytime, anywhere. Bet on the NFL, NCAA, or swing for the fences with the brand new Money Bag. The MyBookie Money Bag is a one-of-a-kind opportunity to spin for crazy odds on props and futures. Just place your bet, spin the wheel, and get ready to score epic odds on the best teams, athletes, and events. You can sign up free today. Use promo code TERRIBLE, that's terrible, and claim a deposit match of any amount up to $1,000. And that's promo code TERRIBLE. Terrible. One word, terrible, to claim your deposit bonus and give yourself the competitive edge. It's not just a sports book, it's a community as well. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie at mybookie.ag.
All right, Dave, let's make our picks for week number 9.
All right, let's get into here. Got some good college games this week, too.
Do we?
Yeah.
Is there anything I don't?
There's a couple of, there should be 3 or 4 ranked teams, I think, going up against it in Georgia. Hold on here. Let me see what the NCAA schedule is.
I'll be watching for Jonathan's post tomorrow to get me ready. Yeah. Oh, you're right. It's Georgia, Tennessee.
Right. Yeah. Alabama, LSU is another game, I think, going on. Let's see what else is on the college schedule here. Texas, Kansas State? Probably not going to be all that good. Alabama, LSU, Wake Forest, and NC State should be entertaining as well there. So there's a Clemson, Notre Dame is also tomorrow. So some good college games on the docket here. Buffalo Bills at the New York Jets. Bills laying 11.5 on the road.
Zach Wilson's just been so poor. I know the Bills still have some injuries. No Jordan Poyer in this game. It's on the road. Is it?
It's at the Jets. Yeah.
I'll go Buffalo. I may regret this one. I'll go Buffalo though.
I'm with you. That's kind of a funky line there, isn't it? But I'll take Buffalo late 11.5 on the road. Miami Dolphins on the road against the Chicago Bears. Dolphins laying 4.5 on the road against the Bears with Chase Claypool.
Yep, give me Miami to win this one by a touchdown.
Boy, what do you think about their deal for Chubb?
It's a pretty big investment. First round pick, ton of money. Yeah, I felt a little rich for a guy who hasn't had double-digit sacks since his rookie season and has had some injuries and things like that. So I haven't studied him too closely, but it felt like a pretty premium price to pay for Chubb.
I will go with the Dolphins as well, lay to 4.5 here. Colts on the road against the Patriots. Patriots at home laying 5.5.
Yeah, I can't quit New England with the Colts having Ellinger at quarterback against Belichick. I got to go with the Pats.
I will make this my stone cold lead pipe lock of the century of the week of the month. Lay to 5.5 of the Patriots here. Minnesota Vikings on the road against the Washington Commanders. Minnesota laying 3. I think Minnesota's coming off their bye too, aren't they, or no? Did they play last week?
I'd have to check. I don't remember off the top of my head, but Minnesota.
No, they weren't on the bye. They played. Who did they play last week? Can't find it here. Go ahead. I don't remember.
But they've been. How about a team that no one talks about?
They played the Cardinals. They beat the Cardinals.
Okay. Yeah. How about a team that nobody talks about too much? I mean, the Vikings are having a fantastic season, just really well-rounded all around. So I got to go Minnesota in this one.
I'm going to go with Minnesota lay to 3 on this one as well too. Green Bay Packers at the Detroit Lions. Packers, a world of problems, man. Laying 3.5 on the road against Detroit.
Yeah, the Lions, though, they just never been able to get it all together. I keep wanting to go with Green Bay. Is this the week I'm going to stick with them? Yeah, I'm going to keep sticking with them. I'm going to keep going chalk here and give me the Packers.
Yeah, I'll hold your hand on this one, too. Boy, a lot of road teams in favorite this week here. I will lay the 3.5, too. The L.A. Chargers on the road against the Falcons. Another road team favorite here. This one time by 3.
I smell a rat here, Dave, to use your phrase. The Chargers, no Mike Williams, no Keenan Allen. Herbert's still beat up. Falcons have been competitive this year. I'm going to go Atlanta.
I'm going to go the other way. I think I think the Chargers find a way to win this by a touchdown. I'll lay the 3 points with the Chargers on the road. Carolina Panthers on the road against the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals laying 7 after coming off of a pretty nice little thumping at the hands of the Cleveland Browns there. Bengals at home laying 7 against the Panthers.
Yeah, I know that offense was a mess in their first game without Chase, but they'll figure it out, and I'm going to go with Cincinnati.
I'll take Cincinnati at home late to 7 as well, too. The Raiders at the Jaguars. Raiders on the road laying just 1.5 in this one.
Yeah, Raiders, as you said, getting skunked last week. But Jacksonville just, still working on some stuff, trading James Robinson. I'll go with the Jags.
I'll take the Raiders to get it right here and win by a field goal. I'll lay the 1.5 on the road against the Jaguars. Seattle Seahawks on the road against the Arizona Cardinals. How about them Seahawks, man?
Mm-hmm.
All that said, Cardinals favored by 2 at home against the Seahawks.
I know they're getting Hopkins back, but still, Seattle's been, the story of the year to me. Geno Smith. I mean, what a season for him. What kind of vindication for Pete Carroll. I'm going to keep rolling with Seattle.
I will as well, too. Man, how many road teams do I have? I've got almost all the road teams, I
think you do.
So far here. I'll take the 2 points in Seattle. The Rams on the road against the Buccaneers. Weird line. Buccaneers favored by 3 at home against the Rams.
I wonder what the over-under is for this one. 2 offenses sputtering. I'll go Tampa Bay.
42.5. 42.5
okay.
is the over-under on this.
I'll go Tampa.
I'll go Rams. I'll go another road team here. I'll take the 3 points here. Titans. This ought to be you would think, at least on paper, the Titans silently put together a nice season. They threw the ball once in the second half?
10 times the whole game. Malik Willis's debut. Smart game plan. Hey, if it's working, Derrick Henry's working. Give him the football.
Yeah. Chiefs at home laying 12.5 against the Titans.
The Titans are going to run. The Titans are going to run the football. They're going to take the air out of that game to try to, keep possessions down. I think the Titans find a way to at least cover this one. They won't win, but they'll cover.
I'll take the Chiefs. I'll take the home team for a change here and lay the 12.5 points against the Titans there. The Baltimore Ravens will get to sit back and watch this on Monday night and kind of get some preview work done for the Saints on top of it there. Baltimore at the Saints, and the Baltimore Ravens just lost
Bateman.
Bateman for the year there. I guess they're going to have who's the old wide receiver that they got going to see more time here?
I don't know who you're referring to.
The one that they signed to the practice squad coming up,
Deshaun Jackson. Oh, Deshaun Jackson. Yeah, good point.
All that said, Ravens laying 2.5 on the road against the Saints in the big.
Well, the Saints don't look a ton healthier. They got Michael Thomas, who's going to miss the Steelers game. He's just been perpetually hurt. Lamar versus Andy Dalton. Is this in Baltimore?
It's in the Big Easy.
I got to go with another road team. Yeah, give me another road team. Give me the Ravens.
I'll take the Ravens on the road, lay the 2.5 there. So obviously no Steelers game to predict there. So that's that on that.
All right, Dave, let's get to reader emails and close out today's show. And we'll get to as many emails as we can to make up for not doing any last show.
Okay, we will start with Bryce on the bye week. Hey, guys, thoughts? Canada's comments about the Steelers play calling situation definitely smells of too many cooks in the kitchen. Now, maybe his phrasing was clunky or he worded it poorly, but all this smells like a little bit of a demotion to me. Do you have any insight into if these types of play calling duties existed before they hired Canada? Number two, with the addition of William Jackson III, do you believe this means that he and Levi will be on the outside and Sutton is going to play more in the slot? Also, can you see a world where Akello is inactive moving forward? Yeah, we talked earlier in the show. We'll have to see how the math works out in the healthy bodies, but I don't think it's out of the question that Akello could be inactive, and I think you will see William Jackson III opposite Levi in sub-package situations with Sutton inside. So I think number two, we got to answer there.
Should know just really quick, Levi Wells with that shoulder. Do we know for a fact that he's playing against the Saints?
We don't.
Yeah, just want to point that out.
Yeah.
And James Pierre had the foot. I think he's good because he talked to the media, but should notice that as well. Pierre had a foot injury in that Eagles game.
Hopefully they get healthy during the bye week here. What about Canada and his comments and too many cooks in the kitchen and it's smelling like a demotion?
Well, I assume that's referencing whenever Canada was asked about, we have a coach that works on third down, a coach that works on goal line, et cetera, et cetera. It was a little clunky, and I wish somebody would have followed up because that would have been a great follow-up question to ask. I don't know for sure because there's still some uncertainty in the answer of that. I imagine that's more than game planning stuff. There's a coach that's going to help create the game plan and study on third down situations and low red zone and stuff like that. I think that Canada is still calling the plays in the situations, but I assume that's kind of the collaborative effort of everybody, doing their part in tape study and preparation and creating the game plan. They come together and that helps create the call sheet for that week. So I don't know if that's out of the norm. It's hard to say for sure. It was an interesting comment. I wish he would have been able to expand and explain that. But I don't know necessarily that means it's a demotion or anything unusual.
Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't answer it any better than what you just did there. Dave in Chicago. Hi, Alex and Dave. I don't like any of the on-roster options to replace Claypool. Is it possible that the Steelers don't either and might replace him with an extra tight end or Watt at fullback to energize the run game? He says, I thought Cowher's criticisms of how they were exposing Kenny were spot on, but I also don't think they can maintain the current run game strategy and just hope it gets better. So the question is, do you think they use the bye week to overhaul the run game approach with more bodies, more 12 or 21 personnel with Boykin and Pickens at wide receiver? I don't think you see many with just the two wide receivers of being Boykin and Pickens. I mean, I understand the theory behind that, but how much are you going to look? I wouldn't be opposed to seeing them maybe try to do more stuff out of 12 or 21. I just how they need to do anything they can do to try to get this run game going, even if it is more 12 or more 21. I don't think you're going to see a lot of 21, meaning, a fullback or another running back on the field. Maybe they'll surprise us there. But even if you saw an uptick in that, it wouldn't be wouldn't be half the game.
Sure.
12 personnel, maybe a tick more up on that. They really need to be in the lab this week trying to, as he kind of states, overhauling the run game there. So, and yeah, look, I mean, you don't need that. And Alex and I say you don't need that kid dropping back 40, but score dictates that. So don't get behind in the game by 10 or 14 points. If you keep it a one possession game, you can stay more dedicated to whatever your run game is.
I'm curious what their personnel usage is in the first half of games, because you're right, second half playing from behind basically forces you into some 11 personnel and throwing the football a lot. I don't think Derek Watt alone is energizing this run game. I don't think any one player is going to be able to energize this run game. They've done some two-back inside zone with Watt. That's kind of been interesting. I think broadly they're going to mix and match. They're going to, it's not going to be just one man replacing Chase Claypool and you call it a day. They're going to try to maybe use some heavier packages. Can Connor Hayward have some sort of role in this offense as a stand-up slot guy? I think that's kind of interesting. I think they'll do some different things. You're right. It won't be Boykin and Pickens on the outside. Johnson's going to play, the vast majority of the snaps. Boykin can come in some one receiver sets, some 22, 13 personnel type looks where you really want to get maybe a good run blocker out there. That's kind of Boykin's role as a receiver. Of course, that could expand a little bit in some 11 personnel should, say, a Johnson kick inside and Boykin play on the outside.
They need to do whatever they need to do to get better. And I think looking at some of the looking at the tape and matching up some stats, I think inside zone's been their best, most productive run scheme when Najee's carrying the football.
But how productive has it been? I mean,
I think like 4 yards a carry. Yeah.
Well, I guess that's for where this team is
better.
at. That's decent. I'm trying to see here really quick. It looks like just really rough numbers here. First half of games, 11 personnel usage is, just give me 1 second. It's pretty high. It's higher than I thought it'd be. I wonder if I'm not sure I have the numbers correct. I have 74%, 11 personnel in the first half of games this season.
I don't have that where I can pull it right now.
Yeah, I'll need to check that, but that seems higher than probably where the team needs it to be.
Mario writes in, Steelers offensive identity found. Good day, gentlemen. This is Steelers finding an offensive identity has been discussed all season. I think the term is a little misleading. An offense's identity isn't so much a philosophy as it is a person. Buffalo's identity is Josh Allen. KC's identity is Pat Mahomes. In short, the identity is whatever has to be done to get the ball in your best player's hands. The team's offensive identity has to be George Pickens, he says. This kid is clearly the best offensive option and needs to be funneled 8 to 10 targets per game, with everything else playing off of that, with the Claypool trade opening up the opportunity. Hopefully that is something they implement going forward. Your thoughts? Well, here's the thoughts. If you're going to continue to see so much zone being played against them, then you're going to have to use Pickens in different methods other than all these back shoulders, curls, and just go balls. So I mean, if indeed they are going to, if indeed what you're stating, you want George Pickens to be your identity and the offense to run through him, then you're going to have to change up schematically what you're doing with him.
Right. I agree with you. And to the idea about identity, I think it's risky and dangerous to ascribe an identity to one person. Now, if you have a Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen, sure, because those are, alien quarterbacks, top quarterbacks in the world. But whenever you put your identity in one guy, then that guy gets hurt. Then what's your identity? I think identity is about who we are as a team, as a personality, perhaps driven through our best players, and that helps create your identity, of course. And of course, you want to get your best players to the football. But I don't like saying George Pickens is the identity of the Steelers offense, because that is so small scope. And if Pickens ever got hurt, then what is your identity? And I don't think that's a good way to build or scheme a roster.
Adam Gesk has a question about slot. While Sims and Gunner seem to be in line for the slot duties, why wouldn't Boykin get a chance? He has. He's arguably got more upside given his height, speed. He navigates traffic well. His PFF grades are best over the middle of the field. He's the best blocker. He still gives you that height advantage down the field ability that Claypool did. Would like to see them mix it up, including playing Sims in the slot a little and even giving Deontay some reps in there. But I think the primary guy should be Boykin. Boykin's skill set just isn't conducive to being a slot guy. He's just not that quick, twitchy, win off the line type of guy. Now, can you occasionally get some snaps in there for him? Yeah, and as we talked earlier in the show, you might see Deontay in there. But I think skill set wise, the two players that best fit that, if you don't put Johnson in there, would be Sims and then Gunner.
Right. Boykin just not a slot receiver, hasn't played there. He's a bigger guy, not a short area movement, quick twitch kind of guy. That's why Claypool didn't fit great there. And, there are big slots, but they typically are a bit more shorthanded and maybe a bit more athletic in terms of the nuanced movement. So I don't see that being a fit for Boykin. Can they occasionally play him there, maybe a couple of snaps, but not going to be his main role.
Adam, back in here again. Doesn't it feel, let's see, about Watt for MVP for 2020? I don't know if he means 2022 or not. He says tied the record for sacks despite playing fewer games. Team record in games, blah, blah, blah. Best quarter was fourth. No quarterback or running back had a truly great year. Well, I guess he's just trying to make a case for him being an MVP. He says for 2021. Look, right now you could make a strong argument for Watt being the Steelers' 2022 MVP right now.
Yep.
Just because what you're missing with not having him out there. Hasm writes in, good morning, Dave and Alex. Who would you start with as the slot wide receiver for the rest of the season? He says, I assume it'll be Gunner. My thought would be to start with Gunner. However, I would actually also use Connor Hayward quite a bit in the slot because he's good in space and has good hands and can run after the catch. Also, what roster move do you think they'll make now that Claypool is gone? I don't know.
Well, Claypool and Jackson swapped. That was all
that
happened there.
I don't know what he means by that, but we just had a long conversation that, earlier in the show that why it's probably going to be Sims.
Yeah, I do think Connor Hayward's interesting, though. I do want to see him more as a receiver. I think he's run good routes this year and the limited action that he's had. So, he's not going to be a traditional or, majority slot guy, but can you be more creative with him? That's a guy I want to see more of by the end of this year.
How about more of him in the red zone, Alex?
Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to that. I think he's got a good feel. He's a good athlete. He's got good hands. He's always going to be a niche role player, not an every down. He does, he's positioned whatever, 90% of the time. He's always going to kind of have his hands in a lot of different pots. But I just want to see more of that guy. I think the rest of the season is kind of about fact finding about the guys you have, the young guys you have, and how they can potentially help you next year.
Did we answer this the other day about offensive coordinator, about Frank Reich? Byron Leftwich are currently under contract. However, imagine for a moment that they would be released from their contracts at the end of the current season. How would you rank these three options as most to least desirable for Steelers offensive coordinator next offseason? Matt Canada, Byron Leftwich, or Frank Reich?
I don't remember if we did or not. I don't think we did. I don't have a ranking right now. Canada would be, I think, probably last on that list, although Leftwich is getting a lot of heat for his job in Tampa Bay with that offense struggling so much.
They can't run the ball either.
Nope. And Leftwich is the old, you got to run the ball to set up play action, and that's some of the antiquated thinking there. So probably Frank Reich, but I haven't done a lot of research, and obviously, no one's limited to just those names.
Right. We'll have plenty of time to talk about that. Let's see. Pastor Joe Green, new OC, early predictions. Thank you for the best Steelers coverage available. Love the Claypool deal. Any ideas who will be in the running for the next OC? He says, in my honest opinion, it will not be someone in-house, someone connected to Whaley, former head coach from somewhere, out of work OC from a fired or not kept head coach. No clue. If things stay status, people ain't gonna like to hear it, but Mike Sullivan, unless this team just breaks tendency or whatnot. Mike Sullivan's going to be on the short list.
He'll be a candidate for sure. Other names I don't know. I wonder if this team's regretting not hiring Pep Hamilton when they interviewed him a while back. He's now the OC in Houston, so I imagine he'll remain in that role with the new coaching staff down there. But yeah, no idea.
Jeff Berg writes in, hello, fellas. What a great week. We won't be losing. When I don't know, buy is pretty tough. I think they're favored by 10 points right now. I think Steelers are underdog to buy. When Mitch Trubisky was named captain, I had sent an email to y'all asking what would happen if a captain Trubisky was replaced as a starter at quarterback. Y'all weren't able to get to that email, which I totally understand. Now that it has happened, I feel like it's difficult to be a captain when you're not playing. Your conversation about who was the leader, who was the leader players can look to on offense made me recall my previous email. What do you think about a captain who doesn't ever get into a game? Was it a mistake to have him named knowing they might be replaced? And that's a good question.
Well, that's player voted, right?
I think so, yeah.
So, I mean, it's not like Tomlin chose that with ever thinking about that kind of stuff. It was out of his hands. I understand the point. It is awkward. It's your captains this year on offense are what? Trubisky, who's been benched, and Najee Harris, who's been struggling. It's not ideal, but you can still lead and be a captain in other ways. You don't have to be a starter or a star to do that necessarily. So I get the point. It is awkward. It is unusual. It is weird. And that kind of sums up this whole team season.
Charles Munger, we'll take one more here. We run a little bit longer than what we thought we might do today. Guys, the Steelers offensive line has been a mess since 2019. I was a firm believer that Pouncey's last couple of years were more reputation than actual talent. Overall, they needed to put new real talent on the offensive line. I don't care who the offensive coordinator is. If you have a bad offensive line, play calling is extremely difficult. He has 2021 draft Creed Humphrey at center instead of fungible running back in the first round. 2022 draft Tyson Smith at tackle instead of a quarterback. All quarterbacks who would have been available, and then all quarterbacks who would have been available in the second round. Jaylen Warren would look real good behind those two young offensive linemen, and you could focus next year's 2023 draft on replacing the old defensive line. Hayward is entering the Pouncey stage of his career, reputation bigger than results. Colbert has put the rebuild back a couple of years. They might not see the playoffs until 2025. TJ Watt will be over 30 by then. There's some strong takes in there.
I mean, it all sounds good. We could talk about who they should have drafted. Listen, I was as big a fan of Creed Humphrey as anybody. I remember before draft day saying, if I could choose whoever I wanted, because people always ask, not what you think Pittsburgh will do, but hey, Alex and Dave, what would you do if you were GM? And I would say I would draft Creed Humphrey in the first round. So I should be as mad as anybody, but I'm not going to hold grudges and try to play revisionist history when it comes to the draft. That's an easy game to play with a benefit of hindsight. But sure, I mean, to the broader point, trenches have to be upgraded, both sides of the football. And I think that's priority number one for Omar Khan and Andy Weidel.
I would definitely agree there. Let me see if there's one last one from Xerxes. David Knox, what would be your grade for James Daniels so far? To me, he stands out for all the wrong reasons. He's very slow to react, too many penalties, not as strong as advertised, and he's certainly not worth his contract. Isn't it time to stop guessing on these free agent offensive linemen and start drafting top talent? Yeah, I mean, I think Daniels has been better as the season has gone along, personally, but it still doesn't mean that you still don't need to address this thing with top talent in the draft.
I think I'm higher on Daniels than the reader is there. I think from where he was this summer, whenever he was a mess, as he really kind of struggled to adjust initially to Pat Meyer's system, he's improved by leaps and bounds in that way. Has it been as good as where we thought it would be, where it needs to be? Probably not. His run blocking probably not as strong as pass pro has been this season. Although I will say to that last point, I mean, drafting is guessing too. I think it's almost more guessing. With free agents, at least they have some NFL body work or resume there. It comes at a greater cost, of course, but drafting or free agent, there's always a gamble, always a guess, always a layer of uncertainty there. So there is no science. If there was a science, every NFL team would have everything figured out.
All right, let's use that as a wrap-up point here, Alex, and we will be back on Monday. breaking down what happened across the NFL landscape. And obviously the Steelers will be getting back to work at that point. So in the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button, upper right navigational bar. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button, upper right navigational bar, and follow the directions there. Make sure you read Jonathan Heitritter got a great post coming of players to watch, on Saturday there with all these big games. That should be a fun read this week as well, too. So we appreciate everybody reading and listening and everything that goes along with that. And as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.